Alexa Plus rolls out slowly, and social media as a top news source? This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Take Control Books, one of the very best sources of clear, concise information on not only Apple's various operating systems, but also key Apple and third-party utilities and more. Visit TakeControlBooks.com and start your library today. One of the things, sort of staying in the same vein, one of the things that we had talked about before when the S lady was falling down, and it seemed like we were seeing announcements from everybody that, their AI, their large language model AI, we use those interchangeably, even though it's inaccurate. We're going to be so much better. And Amazon came out with Alexa Plus. And it's been kind of quiet since then. Apparently, there are people that are using it because they have this very unusual rollout program of not exactly beta testers, but people that were testing it out for them. The article I just threw into the chat rooms is, I quote the title, "I got early access to Amazon's new Gen AI Alexa Plus. Things got weird," unquote. And the article, I mean, it makes me anxious to try it, but it clearly seems like there are holes in it and things it doesn't do well, and it may not perform nearly as seamlessly as the demo that was given or that it was represented. There's a big surprise. And again, it just seems like, and I haven't tried it, so this is not fair. I'm going strictly by the article. Somebody reporting, but it's one of those things that it's not quite where everyone thinks it should be or expects it to be. And so is that going to be something that turns into a detriment for it? Or are people going to start to adopt it and let it get better as we go along? Like Apple Intelligence, like ChatGPT, like Claude. I have no experience with the Microsoft one, so I don't know. I don't hold high hopes because of its developers, but that's another discussion.
Well,
Dave, you want to throw in on that?
Well, I mean, I have to use Copilot because of work, but I'm finding it to be doing well with what I task it to do. Just like I subscribe to ChatGPT. I like doing a little bit of comparisons of what it does. The abilities to be able to find the information, especially in a work environment, is pretty incredible. You can find any email you've written. You can find any document you put together. I mean, when you've got that ability in the corporate world, that's pretty impressive. And being able to put together all this information and being able to write a report or compile data, with a spreadsheet or whatever you're trying to do, impresses me. And when it comes to that, and ChatGPT, I don't know where they're going in the corporate area. I know many companies don't want to use it because there's no control of it. So therein lies why Copilot is what it is in the corporate world.
You make a really good point, because Microsoft took a page out of Apple's book. It's their AI, and they control it, and so it's going to perform that much better within its own family of products. And God knows Outlook needed a better search function. So if it does that, they're ahead of the game right there.
Which it does. Yeah. I mean, I've done it many times, and it's like, I was having trouble finding that. Well, that found it right away for me.
Yeah. That might be the tipping point, Dave, that sends me to it.
Yeah. At least give it a shot. Try it. It won't hurt you. I know.
That's what Meta said about their AI agent, but that's we talked about that.
The first thing you can ask Copilot is, "Can you fix Teams, please?"
Have you asked that question?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. It'll give you an answer in about 6 months. Brian?
No.
Yeah, when I was reading this article, Alexa Plus has a lot of room to grow, but I wonder, and I could be mistaken, but I believe once it's released to everybody, there's two different pricing models. One is standalone, I think $20 a month, and the other one is if you're already involved with Amazon Prime and it's all just part of that package. I think one of the things is you need the specific hardware that's able to run it. And so if you have that hardware and you just happen to be a Prime member, I wonder how much kinder I guess people might be to seeing the system grow and go through flaws if they know that they're not paying a premium over what they're already paying for anyways. Like they got something at the moment in addition to what they're already paying for with Prime. Now down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Amazon raises the price of Prime, in relation to this being added in as part of the package. But at least for now, it looks like it's, you wouldn't be paying extra if you have Prime and you have the right hardware. So I wonder if that may sway people to not, as far as the criticisms that they have towards its mistakes.
Brian, you said something interesting there, right now.
Mhm.
And I agree with you. And if I remember correctly, Jeff was the one in a prior show that pointed out that subscribing to just Alexa or AOAD Plus, sorry, got to be careful, just AOAD Plus was going to be at least as expensive, maybe more expensive than subscribing to Prime, which will eventually include it. So it just felt like Amazon is really pushing you toward Prime, and maybe one of the carrots will be the AOAD Plus, at least at the moment. So I don't know. I do want to say this, that my understanding, and I have to go back and reread this article. My understanding right now is that there are restrictions on the hardware, but I thought that eventually anything that would run the AOAD, they said was going to be able to access AOAD Plus. So I may be wrong on that, but it's an important. It makes perfect sense why they would want to try it out on modern hardware. We'll see how it performs on the other. Marty.
Yeah, I have one of those devices. It's hanging up on the wall, and she's still dumb as a box of rocks. Basically, she gives me the weather and then offers me all sorts of other things that she could do for me, or turns the lights off in my room when I leave the room. The thing, and Dave and I were arguing, disagreeing a little bit about Copilot. What I realize is Copilot probably does some things that I would never use it for. And similarly, what I use ChatGPT for is more model building and more, development. And I'm not sure that would fly very well on Copilot. So complicated prompts or prompt engineering and things like that, whether or not, and so every AI kind of has its own sweet spot. And if you're using an AI for a particular purpose, like I am with ChatGPT, or purposes with ChatGPT, I shouldn't expect the same outcomes if I'm using Copilot.
Marty, elaborate on that. Why shouldn't you expect the same outcomes?
Because I think they basically have different algorithms for doing the searches or combining the information. If I'm using Copilot on Microsoft, yeah, it can help me find all my files. ChatGPT can't do that. They can't go on my system and find the files that I need and stuff like that. I have to resort to using some other method to be able to do that. But at the same time, I'm uncertain that it can do. Copilot is set up to do complicated LLM stuff, prompt engineering, and creating prompt engineers.
Yeah, you make a good point. I wasn't exactly sure where you were going with that, but yeah, since Copilot is integrated in with Microsoft, it's undoubtedly going to do a better job than maybe ChatGPT could. And I'm thinking back to a demo that Dave did here on the show, where he asked Copilot to create a PowerPoint presentation, and we shared that in the show notes. And it was impressive.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. So
Yeah, but
You
I
know,
mean, Copilot's doing the same thing. I'm having it assist me for my Macstock presentation. I'm not copying it word by word, but it's giving me some great suggestions and understanding of what I want to put together on any topic, regardless of what I'm presenting. And I help it with help. It helps me with my work as well as my play with Macstock can be my play. So um, I'm all in on AI now. I've been was kind of hesitant for a while, but then all of a sudden it's starting to get a little more and more traction at work, and now I'm involved in a project and all that kind of stuff. So uh, you can't avoid it. There's just so much power to what the AI tools do, and I know people are resistant to it, but you have to just really see how incredibly valuable it can be if used the right way.
yeah. Well, we talk about this a lot. It seems like AI comes up
It
at
does.
every show, but I feel like it's evolving literally that quickly. That every week or so, there's something new to talk about, some new consideration to give it. But I'm like you, Dave. I'm using it now on probably a daily basis. I'm
Yeah.
careful about what I use it for,
Mhm.
and I use it as a tool, not as something to replace something that I could do myself. But maybe it can not do it better for me, but do it a little bit differently, or maybe um, expand what I was doing. So I'm with you. I think, folks, if you are not experimenting with it, I'm sorry, you're falling behind. You need to play with it. You need to. Doesn't mean you have to use anything it gives you,
Mhm.
but spend just a little time, and it won't bite. And unless you're using Meta's AI, it
Mhm.
won't send anything public. Just don't give it your bank account or your finances, please. I threw one into our list at the last minute because this is an article from today that I found really interesting. Um, that social media is now the top news source in the US.
Are we surprised?
I Dave, I was. I mean, and it's a little scary because social media is not necessarily vetted. Now, what's a little bit tougher to make sense of is what new. Okay, say social media is your news source. What what part of social media? If I'm on X and that becomes my news source, well, just with what X sends me, no, that I would be very uncomfortable with that being my only news source. But if I follow, news outlets A, B, C, D, and E, then I might feel like I'm getting a bit better spread. And I was having this conversation actually last week with someone, and we were both saying that we find the BBC to be one of the most balanced news sources as opposed to what we can get here in the US, and more expansive because it covers not just US issues, but it covers a lot more of the world in a nonpartisan way. So I feel like if I manipulate, no, that's not right. If I tune it right, there's a better word. If I tuned it right, I would feel comfortable with this, um, but I'm still not sure. Um, Marty, you say try CNN Asia?
Yeah, one of the experiences I had traveling, and I spent a lot of time in Turkey. It was my opportunity to see CNN Asia, which kind of presents news stories on the other half of the world. Well, should I say anything off of our continent? And it was very opening and enlightening. And they also had Al Jazeera. They had other sources that were interesting to watch because it gave different perspectives and highlighted news that I wouldn't have seen anywhere else. My concern about is really big about social media. It's ruining the potential for critical thinkers. My God, please don't tell me that TikTok is the top source. I just am pretty much concerned about people not selecting a variety of sources and doing some critical thinking around it.
I agree, but again, Marty, and I'm not a TikTok user, so I can't comment. Britt, I think if Britt's still in the chat room, I'd love to have her comments on this. Um, if TikTok itself is feeding me news stories, I worry. Just like if X is feeding me news stories, I worry. If Facebook is feeding me news stories, I worry because somebody there is curating those news stories with their agenda or their guidelines, as opposed to, taking 3 or 4 or 5 different news sources, some that in the US are maybe lean farther left, some that lean farther right, and try to get a mix of things so that I feel like I've got half a chance. And then throw in CNN, or excuse me, BBC, CNN Asia, whatever. I feel like that would be, I'd have a better chance of getting some accuracy out of things. But that requires me to make some effort.
I'll give you a good example. My wife shared me. I don't care. It's not a big deal, but she sometimes shares me some videos in our private chat on Instagram. So I go and take a look at it, and it's this guy saying that, if you have Prime, you don't have to pay for Apple TV Plus. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. So, and this guy's actually on a video says, well, no, consider it good information. If you have a Prime account, you can go watch Apple TV Plus and not have to pay for it. It isn't going to cost you anything. Why should you pay for both when you get it on there? I mean, it's absolutely false because, yes, you do have to pay for it. You get a 7-day trial through Prime, and then you pay Prime through Prime to get Apple TV Plus. So why would you mislead people? That's just another prime example of videos on TikTok, especially that put out that inaccurate information. I wouldn't trust a lot of the things that TikTok has. There's lots, but the thing is, so many people are so addicted to TikTok these days. And of course, Trump already renewed it for another 90 days. That just got announced earlier today. So it still has a reprieve, but it's still, I don't find that to be a smart source, but a lot of people do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of inaccurate information
right
on some so-called official news sites too. So, there's no magic bullet.
Yep.
Think about how often we talk here about how the tech media takes an Apple story, and one outlet will spin it one way, one outlet will spin it another. Mm. In a lot of cases, they're both just looking for web traffic.
Yeah.
But just the fact that one sees something as an, oh my God, Apple is doomed crisis, another one is like, yeah, Apple stumbled, or this was a little hiccup. It's kind of amazing.
Same thing's happening everywhere. I mean, my experience for decades has been, if there's a story, whether it's in tech news or in the regular news, if there's a story that I actually know something about personally, the stories are almost always wildly wrong. Reporters just parachute in, do the minimum amount to, generate a story. And this was true 20 years ago. So yeah, there's just no magic bullet. And I do think that the mainstream media has gotten a lot worse. And that's one reason why people are turning to other sources, because they've lost their credibility.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Marty? You put a quote into
there's I don't want to steal any thunder from Brian. Brian put in a link to the study, which I hope you'll put into the show notes. And I'm kind of paging through the study to find out to look at the data that's associated with it. It's an interesting study. I find it interesting that it was put together by Reuters, which we don't necessarily consider a social media, a high social media presence. I mean, I follow them on different platforms and have the app on my phone, but it's not the typical social media. And it seems like they're calling for the fact that people are drifting towards social media, as we know from this summary, for their sources of news. And but yeah, it's an interesting report, and I would suggest putting the link, if it's publicly, and it is publicly available, I guess, put the link in the show notes. Yeah,
it's a PDF you can download too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just put it in the YouTube chat, and folks, it will be in the show notes. Brittany is still with us in the chat room. She says, "Is an algorithm curated to your viewpoint significantly different from only Fox or only MSN?" And then she adds, "But then there's even more that isn't legitimate on the socials. Isn't legitimate news on the socials, excuse me." So, yeah, it's a problem. Webb, you have a lot of experience with the media for lots of reasons that we won't get into here now.
And not all of it's good.
Yeah, well, I was not going to
Most-
bring that up, but
Yeah, most of the time he was covering his face with a coat or something as he walked.
how do you feel about this issue? I mean, are you comfortable with the idea that social media is taking the crown, or would you, as someone who's had negative experiences, would you see this as a positive?
I've had positive experiences too. Come on, I had I was quoted in a national business journal, hint hint, that I thought ended up being a hit piece more than anything else. But that's another story for another time. Um, I, I don't view this as so much a social issue as much as it is. I think journalism in and of itself is really gotten very binary. It's either you agree with it or if you don't. Now that's why they had editorials in newspapers, and that's why they tried to cover all views. I think that's gone away right now. And I'm going to use it. It's there's the MSN mindset, and then there's the Fox mindset, and it follows this ideology that I think what journalism has done. When I came up and I was going through journalism classes and on my writing courses that I took, technical writing courses, you tried to be um, straightforward, try to present both sides or all sides, not both, but try to present all sides. And I think that's gone right now. And that's the thing about journalism that I'm really disappointed in. Now, let's extend that to social media. I think social media has, how do I want to word this? How do I want to articulate it? It's just become another channel, okay? And people have a tendency to gravitate to things that they identify with. Joe Rogan's the 400-pound gorilla in that space right now. And a lot of people either gravitate to him or against him. So it's just journalism needs work. I'll just put it that way. I'll leave it at that.
We don't have access to the report itself, but I think we should note that the numbers don't add up to 100. So, it says 54% of adults say their news come from social media, yet 50% rely on TV and 48% on news or websites. Well, that's 150% right there. So it's not saying, I don't think we can say that 54% only get their news from social media. And of course, there's lots of news sites on social media too. So,
yeah. Webb, something, I don't know why, something though that you said there really reminded me that back in the earlier days of CNN, and I cannot remember who the two gentlemen were, but it was Point Counterpoint. And that was the name of the show. And it always turned into an argument. But to be fair about it, it may have been a better thing than what we have now, because at least somebody was making the point and then somebody else was arguing it, arguing the other side. Whereas now it's just like, this is what it is. We're CNN and, we're the news authority or whatever their tagline is.
We don't care. We're the phone company.
Yeah. 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 And so, maybe that, I don't know. I would have to go back and research that as to whether that ends up being a better presentation of a topic or not. But right now, there's no time for it. The networks nor any of the other media seem to take any time to look at the other side.
Yeah,
There was
I'm
an
sure I
interview.
agree with that. Jon Stewart famously did a takedown of that maybe 10 years ago, like bashing that point counterpoint type of thing. And I think there's been a lot of argument that they're just going for clicks by we've got to have two sides, whether there's two sides or not. Who cares what the truth is? The sky is blue. No, it's not. Film at 11.
Well, yeah, there was that.
There was an interview that, of all people in this world, Denzel Washington did. He was being interviewed by some reporter as he was trying to get into some movie premiere or something, and they asked him a question that was politically based. And I really enjoyed what Denzel Washington said, and I'm summarizing it terribly when I do this right now. But he said, the one of the problems with I'm going to use the general word journalism, but one of the problems is that you don't have to be right; you just have to be first. Because if you're first, then you get clicks, and I think that is so true. There's whether you're telling the truth, whether you're hedging a little bit, it doesn't matter as long as you get out there, because journalists right now are really paid bonuses based on the clicks that they get. There's a friend of mine who's on the local radio here. Actually, he became a friend of mine because I became a fan of his show. But he was talking about that in radio, and he left Kansas City and went to Boston, was on the #1 rated Boston show, and was doing really well, but he didn't get the clicks. And now he's back here in Kansas City. So let me get off my soapbox.
I think the show you meant was Crossfire.
That's right. Point counterpoint was 16 minutes.
Right.
And
You're right.
And
You're right.
the Jon Stewart thing I mentioned that I said it was about 10 years ago. It was 21 years ago.
Wow.
And I bet you had black hair then.
Okay.
And I had hair then.
I was waiting for him to punch back, Webb, and he didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.